Hey, college football fans throughout the land, you have landed on the Big House Breakdown. Thank you. This is all things college football, NCAA college football, and with a focus on the Michigan Wolverines. That's right, we're here to talk about the Bussin Bowl. And if we're talking about the Bussin Bowl, then we're talking about Michigan playing Nebraska. So that's going to take place 3:30 tomorrow, Saturday, on Fox. We got not Fox, on CBS. We got a CBS game, and that's a little unusual. But for Big Ten, don't usually get a lot of play on CBS. But that's cool. We'll win anyway. And we're not here for the crap analysis. We're just getting after this with real football information. Because you've heard the Joel Klatts and the Colin Cowherds and the Stephen A. Smiths and all of the talking cabbage heads on all of the dials and all of the stations. But you landed on the right destination to get that real college football info that you want. And we'll get to all of that in just 1 minute, but we got to thank some sponsors. Total Package Energy. Go mob their website, totalpackageenergy.com. Tell them that the Real HD Show channel sent you and the Big House Breakdown. Also, go check out Bass Footwear, Revolutionary Soul Technology from down in the NOLA. That's right, New Orleans. You know what I mean? And then Redeem Vacations bring five people to any Real HD show on the channel. And you too can win a 3-night, 4-day stay at a destination near you. Bring courtesy of the Real HD TV network and Redeem Vacations. Now that is over with, let's get into the Nebraska, Michigan of it all. The Bussin Bowl, or should I say the Bust Down Bowl. Pause. But, we going to make them bend the knee and say uncle tomorrow, man. And, I think Michigan has learned this lesson from traveling to Oklahoma with a really kind of subpar game plan with a quarterback that could do as much as Bryce Underwood. But we'll tell you more about the Bryce Underwood-Dylan Raiola matchup. But first, let's get into the top 25. That's right. So if anybody's listening to the channel right now and you want to chime in on the top 25 as it is, the lineup, what it means, what it represents, we'll get into it right here. So you got Ohio State at 1, LSU at 2, Penn State at 3, Georgia at 4, Oregon at 5, Miami at 6. I don't know how long Miami is going to hold on to that designation. Notre Dame is out of the running. A&M at 7. That was a great game during the weekend. If you saw that Notre Dame A&M game, them feisty DBs out of A&M, we're bringing it. Texas at 8. I don't know how they climbed into 8 with the Arch Manning, the incontinence of it all. Number 9 is FSU. Oklahoma is at 10. Illinois is going to play a really big game this weekend. We'll see if they deserve their ranking against Indiana. Number 12 is Tennessee. They played a really big game last weekend as well. Iowa State at 14, Utah at 15, Ole Miss 15. Utah 14, Ole Miss 15. Indiana 16, South Carolina 17. Auburn 18, Arizona 19, Arizona State. Bama at 20, hey baby girl. Michigan at 21, that will change. And 22 is Florida, 23 is Notre Dame, and 24 is Clemson, 25 is TSU. So if your favorites are on this list and you think this list is posthumous, You think this list should be changed? You think this list is not representative of the sport? I like to go to the Voice of College Football. He does a really great breakdown of a top 25 that makes sense. Um, I don't know if Arizona State is really that good. I think if Michigan and Arizona State went head to head, that may not be the order that transpires. So, let us know, man. Let us know if your team is in the top 25. Do they deserve to be there? Do they not deserve to be there? You let us know on the Big House Breakdown. All right, so we're moving on, man. We're going to recap some of the more outstanding players of Week 3. We have Marcel Reed, Texas A&M quarterback, led Texas A&M to a come-from-behind victory over Notre Dame. Um, threw for 360 yards versus the Golden Helmets. Ahmad Hardy, Missouri running back, 249 yards on the ground with 3 tutties to beat Louisiana. Wow, to beat Louisiana. Crazy, crazy work. Trinidad Chambliss, 21-29 for 353 yards and a tutty. He also rushed for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. That boy sounding a little like Bryce Underwood. Not quite. All right. So we got Gunnar Stockton, Georgia quarterback, led Georgia to an overtime victory over Tennessee, completing 23 of 31 passes for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and added a running touchdown. So Gunnar Stockton is getting busy. Mario Craver, Texas A&M wide receiver, 207 yards on 7 catches, including an 86-yarder. He had over 100 yards 3 times this season. So he's, if he keeps that up, he'll be in line for the Biletnikoff. You know what I mean? He'll be doing his thing. For Fernando Mendoza, Indiana quarterback. That's going to be a big game this weekend with them and Illinois. Had a nearly flawless performance uh, against Indiana State with only one incompletion. You know what I'm saying? So really, really dope for Mendoza. Keyshawn James Newby, 12 pressures on 30 rushes. And Hank Beatty, um, sounds like my in-laws, ranks 3rd in the FBS in all-purpose yards, 466 through 3 games. Wow. Marcel Reed, Texas A&M quarterback, displayed resilience. He delivered big plays, averaged 21.2 yards per completion. Cassius Howell anchored the pass rush for Texas A&M with 3 sacks, 4 TFLs. So there you go. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about my Michigan Wolverines and Bryce Underwood that rushed for 2 touchdowns, threw for 1, had over 400 yards, led the Michigan Wolverines to over 400 yards total offense in that 63-3 smashing, when they played uh, their opponent in Week 3. Cupcake schedule. That team will remain nameless because we got bigger and more mightier fish to fry this week. So no more of the cupcakes like Central Michigan. We moving on. You know what I'm saying? To the Bussin Bowl with them Nebraska dudes. Now, for what it's worth, I'll get into that later. So let's continue. So if the playoff were today, Ohio State, LSU, Miami, and Penn State would all get the first round byes. Georgia, Oregon, Florida State, Texas Tech would all host a first round game. Illinois, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and South Florida would all be in the 12-team playoff layout. So there it is for you. And Heisman Watch. So we have, Carson Beck did his thing during the weekend, and there's a list going on. So I'll put the Heisman Watch list. Carson Beck leads the Heisman watch list. Let me put that up here right now so everybody can see and everybody could get involved. All right. All right. So that's the one more time. You want to react? Bring it on back. Come on. All right. Well, all right. There you go. So Carson Beck is at one with a 700 approval rating. John Mateer has a 900 or better approval rating or leads in the Heisman voting with a plus 900. Beck is in first place with a plus 700. Dante Moore is a plus 1100. That's kind of how they decided. Gunnar Stockton is at a plus 1200 out of Georgia. Marcel Reed out of Texas A&M is at a plus 1500. Joe Aguilar out of Tennessee is at a plus 1500. Gus Garrett Nussmeier is at a plus 1500. They're kind of tied, Aguilar and Nussmeier. And then Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, is in the running as well with a plus 1600 rating. And I believe with the third straight 100-yard gain, I think Justice Haynes of the Michigan Wolverines should be in the Heisman conversation as well. So, that's just one to grow on, one to watch. Also, week 4's biggest game. So you got Texas Tech versus Utah. Give me Utah, better defense. You got Auburn versus Oklahoma. Who would I take in that one? I'm not really impressed with Auburn these days. Give me Oklahoma. Illinois, Indiana. Illinois has the better defense. I'm taking Illinois and the points. Michigan, Nebraska, running game and defense travels. Give me the Wolverines. That was kind of a spoiler. And then Tulane and Ole Miss. Give me Ole Miss for the better offense. Does anybody want to tap in, chime in? Now's your time. Put it in the chat. You can come on live if you like. I'll put the call letters on the bottom, and anybody could come in live and participate in the chat, and we could, talk some serious college football. I see some wandering eyes. I see some voyant eyes out there. So I'm hoping that folks get brave, step up, get off the water cooler, and say it with your chest. Come on the show and let it be known. You know what I'm saying? Put your chin up, put your chest out, and say it for real, for real. There you go. So we got CCGIN 466B6. Let me make sure that's accurate so someone doesn't say, yep, that's it. That's the correct one. So y'all can all join with those letters. You put that in your call list above, or your URL, or your address bar above. You come on through. I'll let you in, and we can spin that good info, that good debate, that good talk about college football, that CFB as it be. You know what I'm saying? So we just went through a quick rundown. We did the top 25 college football top 25 AP. We did the outstanding players from last week. We did the Heisman watch. We did what if the playoff word today, who would be in, who would be out. My Wolverines would be out, but we're climbing. And we're going to see. We also did the biggest games of week 4 that you should watch out for during the weekend. And we also did the Heisman list. We also did the Heisman list. So, we covering some ground. We covering some ground this evening. So tap in for no other reason than to talk some real good college football. I'm gonna put the bright side on because we need to be on the bright side. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, buddy. We doing some things. So we're going to get into this matchup. We're going to get into this matchup of Nebraska versus Cincy. Now, you've heard all the talking bobbleheads. You've heard the Joe Klatch. You've heard the Josh Pates. You've heard the, everybody that is paid to run their jip about this particular matchup and what they think of it. Who they think is going to win, who they think is deserved to win. I'm hearing a lot of people that love the tossing the ball around the yard. They're picking Nebraska to win. I'm not really sure why that is. Nebraska has a real lightweight defensive line, and they run a 3-3-5, which has inherent holes in their run scheme and their run fits. And they have a, kind of a lighter defensive line. They're not really that heavy. They're more athletic. They're not those, one gap, two gap, ABC gap players that you would expect in a 3-5 defense. They're more talented on the back end than on the front end. So we'll get into that right about now. And we're going to do it with a little thing called matchups. You know what I'm saying? Let me put that on there. Boom, matchups. Yeah. Let's talk about the matchups. Now, matchups is basically where on the Big House Breakdown, we talk about the team that Michigan is going to play. If we didn't get anybody, with any hardcore college football conversation to pop on or make comments, we jump into our Michigan focus, right? So let's do it. So the matchups are basically how does each team skill-wise, position-wise compare to one another? Well, first of all, the blue chip ratio of Michigan to Nebraska. Michigan has a 54% blue chip ratio on its team. Nebraska has a 28% blue chip ratio on their team. So right away, Michigan has the talent and the 5-star edge on Nebraska, right? But they do have a 5-star quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Michigan has one as well. So I guess that's where we'll begin with the matchups. Quarterbacks. Bryce Underwood, Dylan Raiola. Let's go with Raiola first. Raiola is a connected dots, quick passing game, darter. That ball comes out of his hand real fast, nice tight spiral. He can make all the throws, but he's very erratic with the football under pressure. You could get him into some really peculiar circumstances with the rush and with some disguised pressure. He can run a little bit. He's a big body boy. You know what I'm saying? He's about 220, 225 on the teetering toward the 230 side of weight and stature. And Bryce Underwood is about the same. And the only thing about Bryce Underwood is I believe he has he has more upside. The floor is great with the both of them. That means what you're going to get on an everyday, regular basis with these two quarterbacks is you're going to get efficient quarterback play that's going to move the ball, matriculate the ball up and down the field, make plays for you. Bryce Underwood is a better runner. He's a lot more creative with the football. And I think he runs a cleaner offensive system. Now, in Nebraska, they went and built around Dylan Raiola. And they let Dylan Raiola make all the mistakes he wanted to make last season. And for some reason, like they did with the Penn State quarterback, Drew Allar, they want to anoint this kid. They think he's ready. They thought Drew Allar was ready last year. We know how that went. Once you got deeper into the schedule and you started playing some real teams. Cincinnati played Nebraska. That was only their real competition. And that's not going to really show and, what, Dylan Raiola can do because, of course, they're not one of your traditional blue bloods with a talent composite or blue chip ratio over 50%, where every position is a 4-star, 5-star caliber player that you're playing against. So we'll find out this week what Dylan Raiola is really made of. When our defensive ends, when D-Mo was screaming down his ear, you know what I mean? When Jay Sean Barham is screaming down his ear, but wait, we don't want to get too fast. What do I think of the quarterback matchup? Strength against strength. I think they're both 5-star players. They're both recruited 5-star players. They're both highly touted quarterbacks in their quarterback class. I'm going to give it even. I'm going to give it an even. Because what Bryce Underwood is learning about throwing the football against zone, read, false reads, man versus zone, man zone, rolling coverage, quarters, what he's learning about in the college game, Raiola has made all the mistakes, and they hope he's ready to move on and have that be a permanent part of his maturity in his game. And then Bryce runs better than Raiola. He's a lot more, dynamic and athletic with the ball in his hand. So I'm going to give that matchup edge an even. It's a push. Okay? Now let's go to running backs. So in running backs, Nebraska has Emmett Johnson, really gritty, one-cut slasher, really tough runner after contact. Nebraska's running game is nothing to write home about. They're not beating people with their running game. They may average 1 score a game with their run game, and that's because they have to be on the goal line and score the football. I don't know if I'm seeing Emmett Johnson in those games that he played throughout the year break off 60-yarders, 40-yarders, and take it to church. I haven't seen that yet. So that won't be the feature of the Nebraska game, but it will be a feature of the Michigan Wolverine game with Justice Haynes. Justice Haynes should be in a Heisman watch. He has scored at least 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games, and he's rushed for over 120 yards in each of the last 3 games. He is doing really well on the season. His average per run is not that high, only because we did something different in the Oklahoma game. I don't know what we were doing on offense in the Oklahoma game. We were trying to figure it out while keep Bryce Underwood safe and not have him throw 2-3 picks against Oklahoma. We actually stayed in that game. So, but anyway, we're talking about Justice Haynes. So Justice Haynes is a rocket in the pocket. You give that dude the ball, you give him a cutback lane, he gone. He gone. He's got great vision. He's everything that we wanted, Donovan Edwards last year to have. He has the speed of a Donnie Edwards and the vision of a Blake Corum. And we're going to need him this week, along with Marshall, to grind out those tough yards against a undersized Nebraska 30 front. You know what I'm saying? We're going to need that. Now, they like to flip-flop and move around, and I'm hoping that we have some things in store for them for all of the flip-flopping and all the athletic motion on defense that they offer. But I'm going running backs on that one. So for quarterbacks, it's a push. It's even. For running backs, I'm going Michigan, right? So for wide receivers, better outing for the Michigan wide receivers last week. Samaj Morgan got in the end zone. Everybody contributed with at least a reception and some yards after the catch. I like the way that Channing Goodwin is developing. He's reminding me more and more of C.J. Johnson. We're going to need that as the season develops. But they're not like the Nebraska wide receivers. Dane Key, Hutch, Barney, Lindenmeyer, the tight end. Those people could get after it. And they surrounded Raiola with some quality wide receivers. They surrounded him with some quality wide receivers. Let me make sure I'm not leaving anybody out of that lineup. Dane Key, Barney, Lindenmeyer, Hunter, yeah, and then Lindenmeyer, yep, Lindenmeyer. So that's what it is. So those are going to be your main targets, and they've had a lot more production throughout the course of the last 3 games than the Michigan wide receivers. I think Michigan is going to get their wide receivers going. But for right now, I'm going to give the edge to the Nebraska wide receivers because Nebraska, like Oklahoma, wants to throw the ball. They want to get the ball downfield. That's their bread and butter. They don't mind being one-dimensional. They think that's a strength. They think that they're the Houston Oilers or the Buffalo Bills of the 80s, and they could just throw the ball all over the yard. You know what I mean? The three amigos in Washington, the Redskins, back when they were the Redskins, now they're the Commanders. You know what I'm saying? So the matchup edge for wide receivers goes to Nebraska. So let's do all the offensive positions and then I'll recap. Lyndon Meyer is the tight end. He's a good receiver. He's not a game breaker for Nebraska. But for Michigan at the tight end position, we have some people that can make a hell of a difference in the way that the game progresses. So first, we'll talk about Max Bredesen. That's our H-back, fullback. That'll knock the block off of you. He's done it to ask them Ohio State players last year who wound up in the end zone trying to go head up with, Max Bredesen. So, and he said he didn't have a good game last week. So he's going to be looking to come back out. Well, not last week, but against Oklahoma. So he's going to be looking to come out and make a statement against a really great road opponent in Nebraska. He's going to look to take some heads with his blocking and lead block for Bryce Underwood, who wants to kind of stretch his legs a little bit this week. Wink, wink, if you get what I'm saying, right? So, but then we also have Marlon Klein. Marlon Klein is, I'm not saying he's Colston Loveland-like yet, but he's on his way. He is on his way. If you saw that wheel route in the very first game versus New Mexico, you will understand what I'm saying. And if we had him versus Oklahoma, I'm sure we would have made and matriculated the ball, up and down the field just a little bit more, had a little bit more mo behind what the offense was doing. So I'm going to count Bredesen and Klein's production catching the ball, and he's a great inline blocker for the run game also. So real strong dude, real fast dude, faster than Colston Loveland, who's in the NFL right now playing for the Chicago Bears. So, and Colston Loveland even says this, Klein is more talented than me. So now's the time to bring that out. Now's the time to show that, execute it, make it do what it do. So I'm going to give the tight end matchup edge to Michigan. And then O-line. Now, O-line is kind of a push because Michigan has some issues with pass protection, but they run block really well. Nebraska on the flip-flop has issues with run blocking, but they pass block really well. So that's going to be a push. That's going to be a push. I'm going to go over some things a little bit later, some weak points that I think I see in the Nebraska offensive line that we're going to talk about when we talk about hot takes, insights, and predictions. So once we get to that point, I'll drop that on the, and this is something that's a lot of crap analysis because a lot of people aren't mentioning this. And it has a lot to do with the success of Nebraska playing tomorrow if that offensive line is what I'm going to talk about, right? So I'm going to make that a push. So let's review all of the push for the offensive line. We got tight end goes to Michigan, wide receiver edge goes to Nebraska, running back edge goes to Michigan, and quarterback edge is a push. It's even. So Michigan gets the slight edge on the offensive side because the running backs, tight ends, and because of running backs and tight ends. And if that's any indication of what's going to happen tomorrow at 3:30, then Michigan may wind up the better of the two teams tomorrow. But let's go to defense. So let's go to D-line, right? Michigan has a really deep D-line with 4 deep. We're 4 deep at defensive end, which is featured from Derek Moore. TJ Guy is going to return this week, so we'll have his pass rush abilities available to us this week. We got Jayshon Barham coming off the edge, substituting in and out as a defensive edge. And, we got Cameron Brandt. We got Dominic Nichols, who's been really, really good, really consistent, bringing a lot of pressure off the edge. So we have some quality people coming off the edge, to really put pressure. And they play the run really well. Derek Moore plays the run really well. He's going to be a first day NFL selection. We hope TJ Guy joins him, and they read the ball really well. And I hope they let loose this week. I hope they play with their hands. I hope they break blocks. I hope they, get shot out of a cannon. And I hope they put a lot of pressure on Dylan Raiola. Where we need the pressure to come from, though, is from our tackles, our front. We need our tackles to really get engaged and push the pocket. If we can get, Rajon Benny to push the pocket and create some mayhem inside the tackle box, that would make Dylan Raiola speed up his quarterback process of seeing the field and have him throw into some mistakes, or even have him wind up in the lap of one of our defensive ends running into him with his hair on fire like Barham. So, and then with the Huskers, their defensive line, now I have to open this up so I can get it right. Cameron Leonard, decent but undersized. Elijah Judy at the nose, he's a very stout cat, about 300 pounds. Keona Davis, good dude, undersized as well. They have a jack position at the linebacker. Sometimes they play on the line, sometimes they play a little deeper in coverage, and that's who. And they also have William Nawari. Now, William Nawari is the one that they think is really the specialty player, and he's going to come off the line with his hair on fire and make a difference for Nebraska. Now, like I said in the intro of the episode, Nebraska's defensive line is underweight. And when you play a 3-3-5, you're basically giving up inherent holes in the run fits of your defensive scheme. So normally if you'd have like a 40 front, meaning featuring 4 down linemen, or you'd have a 50 front featuring 5, or even a 30 front where people walk up and give you extra help on the defensive line rather, you kind of make for those gaps. You make up for those gaps. But a 3-3-5 is basically you're covering for what your D-line cannot do from a position standpoint, the lack of depth or the lack of talent on your D-line, and you're covering it with your back 7, your backers, and your DBs. And it's also to cause some confusion with the offensive line, so they don't know where the robbers and the jokers and the raiders, the blitzers, are coming from. But in a team like Michigan, that's not afraid to run it 30 times in a row on you, all they'd have to do is zone scheme it, duo, combo block it, and they could wash all of those, they could wash all of that downhill as running backs seek cutback lanes and jump cuts and get upfield. But like, Texas Tech played Michigan in the playoffs a couple years ago, if you have a real feisty 3-3-5 and you're not making the right read calls and you're not making the right adjustment calls, and your 3-3-5 is really feisty, they move around a lot, you may be able to get away with some of that. Not in the long term, but some of it. So I guess that's what they hope is going to be on Nebraska's edge matchup. So who am I giving a D-line edge to? I'm giving it to Michigan. Michigan is deeper. Michigan has more senior players along its D-line. And you're going to see a lot of those players on Michigan's D-line playing on Sunday in the NFL just next year. So next season, like Demo and TJ Guy and Jay Sean Barham. So I would go with Michigan's D line. We just need more pressure. We need our D lines to get home. We're very good, according to Pro Football Focus. The Michigan defensive line is very. They have 100% rating when they're providing pressure throughout the game. They provide a lot of pressure, but we got to get home. We got to get home on 10% of the pressures that we apply. So if we did that, then we'll be in great shape. So linebackers. Uh, let's look at Nebraska's linebackers. I mentioned before that they got the jack position like Ohio State does. They have a weak side linebacker in Javin Wright. Marquise Watson plays the middle linebacker. So that's who they feature. Tall, athletic guys that like to move around before the snap, cause a lot of havoc and confusion in your blocking schemes as a unit. I don't know if I'm seeing any all-conference linebackers coming out of that group. They're fast, they're athletic, and they play to their game plan. That's the best I can say about that group. I don't know if I'm going to get anybody that's going to stand out and make me say, wow, this dude is going to get in there and just kill it. But Jay Sean Barham and Ernest Hausman, Ernest Hausman is he is set to be one of Big Ten's all conference linebackers from the beginning of the season. And Jay Sean Barham is just that LT type of linebacker where he's so strong, fast, and furious that you try to put him everywhere you can to get pressure, to get TFLs on run plays and all kinds of stuff. Very high football IQ. He can look through the running back to the quarterback, look through the tackle to the quarterback or the running back in the backfield. Very high football IQ, but he's a furious player and will take your head off. I'm going with the Michigan linebackers. Jimmy Roller is a really good linebacker. We also have Cole Sullivan, who will be a starter when Ernest Hausman leaves. We're really deep. We got Troy Bowles as well. The son of the NFL coach. So we have some really big. We're deep at linebacker, and we have a lot of talent at linebacker. And if we get our linebackers, first of all, we got to stop the run. We got to get really great run fits, stop the run. They did a great job last week of doing that. Oklahoma really didn't have a really great running game against us either. Neither did New Mexico. So I'm not really seeing how Nebraska with Emmett Johnson is going to be a world beater. That means that linebacking group, after they establish that the run is not a profitable unit for Nebraska, they're going to pin their rears back and rush the passer like their hair's on fire. They're going to add to the front that's going after Dylan Raiola. So, with that being said, I'm giving an edge matchup of the linebackers to Michigan. Now, the secondary, I'm going to say, is a push, even though, according to Pro Football Focus, Nebraska's DBs have had the best secondary grades of any team in, the country. They're over a 90% as a, secondary unit. They just don't tackle well. Michigan tackles well. We're very good in coverage. We just can't get lost in the sauce if we have to cover more than 3 to 4 seconds. Jair Hill, we hope we can get Zeke Berry back. Jair Hill has to be really, really stout against Dane Key. We need all our younger DBs that are going to be in the nickel and dime situations to really get in there and play off the hips of these, Hunter and Barney to make sure that they are, bottled up. We need our secondary to have a great game. We really do. I'm gonna call it a push, only because I'm not crazy about the safety unit in Nebraska. I like the corners. I think the corners really play well. I'm not crazy about the safeties, but they're a mature unit. They're almost all seniors. Let me put that defensive depth chart up again. Let's look at it. Let's see what they're doing with their corners. Yeah, so Sear Wright is the dude. That's that dude. Deshaun Singleton, Marquise Buford is a baller, but they can get caught up. They can get caught up. The problem with the defensive secondary for Nebraska is that Nebraska, they don't tackle well. They cover well. They just don't tackle well. And you could tell this is what's going on with Nebraska because this is Raiola's specialty, putting that ball in the air. So they must spend a lot of time in practice going against 7-on-7. They're spending a lot of time covering, and working out there, coverages and all of that, playing on air versus Raiola in practice. And that's pretty much how practice goes for them, I'm pretty sure. You know what I mean? Which only, lends to them being great coverage DBs, maybe not so good against the run. And they're going to face a run unit this week they're not used to facing. You know what I'm saying? But now let's go to the eye in the sky, man, because time is moving. So the eye in the sky is the health, wealth, and vitality of each team. Nebraska's 3-0. They're doing it the way they want to do it. They're throwing that ball all over the place. They're doing a lot of quick game. Raiola looks very confident, but he could be flustered into mistakes. Emmett Johnson looks like a running back that wants more touches, but the offensive coordinator, let me see if they got the offensive coordinator in that depth chart. I forget his name. The offensive coordinator for, no. Yeah, the coaches, the offensive coordinator's name is not here on the depth chart for Nebraska. Either way, they want to throw that ball. And, if he played for Illinois, Emma Johnson, he might be all conference because Illinois wants to run that rock. You know what I'm saying? Whereas running a rock for Nebraska is a secondary option. But if they want to be, and what I'm hearing from all of the, bobblehead analysts, is that Nebraska wants to take that step into a perennial powerhouse in the Big Ten. Well, if they want to do that, then they got to be able to run the rock, and I just don't see it. I don't see it. They're a healthy team, though. They got they're undefeated. They're very confident. The character of the team may hurt them because they want to be one-dimensional. They want to be one-dimensional. And that really plays into what, Wink Martindale likes to do, which is make you one-dimensional. What we got to do is take advantage of that, bring enough pressure to put that boy Raiola in the ground more times than not. Fluster him, hit him, hurt him. Have that New York Giants versus Patriots mentality where, you're going to beat that quarterback up. You're going to want to make him wish he stopped taking snaps. You're going to make him go to the sideline and start banging helmets and being angry with his, fullbacks and tight ends for not giving him that max protection because he can't get anything off. So that's kind of what I see from them. And they haven't really played anybody. So all this, glorious prognostication about how good Nebraska is going to be when the only real competition they played in 3 games is Cincinnati. That's not a perennial, blue blood of college football that has a really high, blue chip ratio where you could really understand that you accomplished some things versus that team. Are you playing, Houston Baptist and Akron? Man, I mean, you ain't played nobody. That's the cupcake schedule. So now this is the first game. Tomorrow at 3:30 is the first game when they're really gonna have a measured opponent where they can say, we're doing the eye in the sky, where they can actually say, um, I think we're good because we did this and we did that versus Michigan, or we didn't do this and we didn't do that. Now this is right up Wink Martindale's alley, you know. But the health of the team is good. They could just be very one-dimensional. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, Michigan will be without their coach, Sharon Moore, which I'm pissed about over this sign stealing crap. Hopefully, this is the end of all of that. And then, at least for this season, they'll have one at the top of next season when they go overseas and play. But at least this is the end of all of that monkeying around with suspensions and signs and this and that, and all of the, all of the garbage, all of the foo-foo that's within those violations that were quote unquote, cheating or whatever. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. The whole world has spent a gazillion amount of time on that. But anyway, so after last week's offensive performance of scoring 63 points, scoring, I believe it was 6 running touchdowns as an offense, 2 passing touchdowns as an offense, we righted the ship versus what we were doing in the Oklahoma game. And that's because Bryce Underwood was allowed to be a talent instead of worrying about being super technical, getting every read on the line of scrimmage correct before he was able to spin the ball. He's able to go to the line of scrimmage, make a call, make a look, start the play, and if all else breaks down, go be an athlete. If first look ain't there, second look ain't there, third look, go be an athlete. He doesn't have to do that every play, but that's the change up in what was going on from last week to this week. And it paid dividends. 63 points. Now, if you just half that, if Michigan just amounts to half of that offensive output against Nebraska, we win. If Michigan scores 33 to 35 points against Nebraska, we win. Like, we win going away because that means we ran the ball really, really well to score 5 touchdowns. And that means we had some defensive stops to get some favorable position to put 5 touchdowns up by the fourth quarter against this sort of a defense. So they had a players-only meeting in Michigan where they talked about the outcome of the Nebraska game. And there were some pledges and there were some assurances made and some fences got mended. And, they made some, really great moves on the offensive line, like putting Jake Guarnera at guard when, Giovanni Ohadi is hurt. And we're shuffling a little bit on the offensive line. But what's great about Guarnera is I believe Guarnera is a center guard combo player. And he's good at being technically sound with blocking. So is he going to blow you off the ball? Probably not. But he'll make those seal blocks. He'll make those combo blocks. He'll make those backside blocks that will give Justice Haynes the angles to run through and run around and get really great results on the ground. So both teams, and of course, when Jason Barham is in the game, when he's rushing, he's our LT. He's our most disruptive player. Barham is really good. He's our Carl Banks. He's getting there, getting busy, smacking people around, being a captain of the defense. I love our safety game. Our corners have to hold up versus some really good wide receivers this week. I love the health of the team because, for all intended purposes, that 3 was a field goal, and that means we basically shut out Central Michigan. So you could say, for all intended purposes, that 3 was a shutout. Now, it doesn't say 0, so nobody's talking shutout. I'm going to talk shutout because a field goal is a win for your defense, technically. So the health of both teams are really, really up. The only issue I see is Nebraska plays right into our hands being one-dimensional. And they don't have a running game. And for us, we have a running game, and we play really, really stout defense. And the old adage is running game and defense travels and wins championships. So let's go, before we run out of time, let's go into hot takes, insights, and predictions. Well, the insights, let's go real quick. Like I said before, I kind of gave it away. Nebraska's lighting the pants on the defensive line. I think Michigan can run against them. If Bryce can go to the line and is allowed to let Nebraska do all their Chinese fire drills, and then he can call him, and the center can make some blocking calls where we can zone, wash down those lighter defensive linemen and get one-on-one sealed blocks against these linebackers. I think the Michigan running game could have a really big day, and I'm talking like a 300-yarder rushing the ball type of day. Because all you got to do is give Justice Haynes a crack. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone against any unit in the country. It doesn't matter who you're playing. So, on defense, on offense, Nebraska doesn't offer much of a running game, which makes them one-dimensional, which means Michigan can pin their ears back and go get Raiola and make him really, beat up, hurt, and antsy and throwing into mistakes. So it's on Wayne Martindale as the defensive coordinator, to add the things that are going to pressure Raiola from a game plan perspective. They're going to put him in those positions to have him make a lot of costly mistakes. I see 2 turnovers in this game from Raiola in the air. I may even see a strip fumble from Barham on Raiola. So I see Raiola coughing the ball up with a fumble and maybe 2 interceptions within the course of the game, giving Michigan a short field, and that may lead to quick running game points or quick passing game points for Michigan. Which is why I don't understand the talking bobbleheads. And what's interesting, when I listen to these people talk about what they think and how they think the game is going to progress and who's going to win the game, I don't ever hear them talking about how. They just have faith that Raiola is going to throw the ball all over the yard. He only threw for 250 yards last week. It's not like he's having these 400-yard games against people. He's done some really good things throughout the season. Don't get me wrong. He's done some great things. He looks a lot more improved for what he's offered so far, but he hasn't played anybody. So when he plays a really stout defense that can put a lot of pressure on him with pro looks and confusing coverages and, defensive players screaming past him, we'll see what he looks like then. We'll see what the Golden Boy looks like then. You know what I mean? We'll see if he's really ready. And the Nebraska team is really ready to step into the Big Ten and the national spotlight. There's a couple positions on that offensive line I don't like. The left guard, I looked at a play versus Cincinnati, and I saw the left guard doing like a 360 in pass coverage. Like he turned his body around in a full circle, and a defensive linebacker screamed past him. If you're going to do that versus Michigan, you're going to get killed. You're going to get killed. And that right tackle is very susceptible to a senior pass rusher like Derek Moore, who can use his hands and bull rush and bully people up the field. You know what I mean? So between Barham, Demo, and Rajon Benny, we should create a lot of pressure for Raiola with those holes in their offensive line. Now, I could talk about holes all I like. I could talk about the lack of running game for Indiana. Michigan has to take advantage of these things. If they don't, and they let Nebraska play their game, then of course they're going to pick you apart. If you let anybody play their game, they're going to pick you apart. So you have to disguise things. You got to do some contain blitz, some dummy blitzes. You have to do some things that stir the pocket. You know what I mean? But unleash Barham, unleash Moore, unleash Benny. Do those combo stunts on the defensive line that frees up people like Derek Moore to scream up the field and wreak havoc. I would love to see one of those combo twists and stunts on that left guard and have him doing 360s again while he's trying to block for Dylan Raiola. So I think the defensive line at a certain point is going to be a little too much for this offensive line and not very deep. They get very young after their starting unit. Let me put their other unit up here. Let's see what they look like on this offensive line. We got a senior, 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 senior. Then backups, you get junior, sophomore, sophomore, sophomore. So you get a lot of young players after that senior heavy, offensive line. That's really not that good. They're really not that good. But because they have the quick game, you can cover a lot of holes for a defensive team, an offensive team, that if you get the ball out in 2.2 seconds, 2.7 seconds, you can cover a lot of holes in your offensive line. But if you go back to the All-22, Cam, and you look at that Cincinnati game, you'll see what I saw. And Cincinnati was in that game with them well into the third quarter. It was a ball game. Well into the third quarter. I don't think they offered a level of competition that Oklahoma gave Michigan. And Michigan was in that game well into the third quarter. So, you see the top 25 here. Look, you see where, let me take the banner down. You see where Oklahoma is. Oklahoma is, they're 10. They're 10th. And where is Nebraska? They're not there. They're not in the top 25. And that means something. That means that, the prognosticators they're questionable with this team. They think they're good. They think they can do some things, but they're not quite sure how this team is going to respond. Dylan Raiola likes to throw a lot of turnovers when pressured, going on last year's statistics and whatnot. And they're going to play a team that likes to run the ball. So as usual, the conventional wisdom is keep a really good offense off the field with a good running game, swallow the clock, beat a ball constrictor, play defense, pressure the quarterback, and get hits on these wide receivers. Michigan has a defensive back by the name of Brandon Hillman. They call him the hit stick. I would like to see the hit stick get a nice big hit on either Hunter or Dane Key or Barney. If Hillman could get a hit and put one of them boys down over the middle, I think that will change the complexion of how. Now, I'm not saying these guys aren't competitive, but they'll be hearing footsteps in the dark. You know what I mean? They will be hearing footsteps before the footsteps arrive and before that hit arrives. So once again, we're talking insights, hot takes, and predictions. So those are my insights. My hot take is I see Justice Haynes rushing for close to 200 yards because they let Akron run all over them. They let Cincinnati do a fair amount of their running game got going against Nebraska. So why shouldn't Michigan's? Michigan is a better running team than all the teams they played. Even Houston had some running game, they had some running game success against Nebraska. They just don't play the run well. Why? Because there's inherent holes in a 3 front. In a 30 front, there's inherent holes because the linebackers play off. That creates those bubbles between the line of scrimmage and where the linebackers are. And if you get that 30 front blocked and they get to the second level, linemen get to the second level, wash those linebackers down, and now you got running backs running, creasing for 10, 12, maybe even 30, 40-yard chunks, just running the ball. And now you're talking about three people running the ball really well for Michigan: Marshall, Justice, and Bryce. So my hot take is that, we're going to use the running game to open up the passing game. I see a lot of play action in this one. In the first series, I would throw a play action in there and get that ball in the air as deep as I can make it. And just have Bryce throw it out of bounds or something if the play isn't there. Have McCulley run like a 9 route, a corner, and just put that ball up. If you can hit him, hit him. If you don't, have them DBs back up. And once you get them DBs backing up, now you can, get them in running them quarters, get them running that 3 deep look. You know what I mean? Once you get those DBs backing up, now you can run that running game. So, I think we should take a couple shots early, get these DBs backing up so we can do everything else we want to do on the LOS, on the line of scrimmage. So my prediction for as we wind this down is I see Michigan beating Nebraska. If we score at least half of the offensive output, at least half, but in minimum, half of the offensive output that we scored against Central Michigan will be in the 30s. If Michigan outputs in the 30s versus Nebraska, we win. Because that means we did some things on defense to flip the field, to give us great opportunities, short fields, give our offense the opportunity to pound the ball, throw the ball, and let Bryce kind of be the 5-star best quarterback of the week that he is as a talent. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I see. And we got to hit these boys, man. We got to hit these boys. We got to hit Raiola, and we got to let these receivers know on more than one occasion, that we're there. We're there. We're going to bat these balls down. We're going to smack you around. We're going to double team you. We're going to bracket you. You know what I mean? Our linebackers are going to get involved in the coverage. You're going to see a lot of different things that are not going to allow you to feel comfortable to just run your routes and be what you want to be on that Lincoln, Nebraska field. So, that's going to wrap it up for today. A team like this A team like this is really, really easy to dissect, and it's really, really easy to kind of prognosticate what can happen because they want to be one-dimensional. They can't really be two-dimensional because they don't run block well. But all the prognosticators, all the talking cabbage heads are going for Nebraska because, the league is about throwing the football. And Raiola throws the football, which excites the fans, which makes the fans go crazy. And Michigan is the antithesis of that very thing. They run the ball, they pound you into submission, they make you say uncle. Now, we just hope Bryce can get in there like a DJ, mix it up, be real talented, so they can't understand where the offense is coming from. And by the time they turn around and look, it's a deep bomb to McCulley in the end zone. All right, man. We need Barham to have a big day. We need Bryce to have a big day. We need Justice Haynes to have a big day. We need everybody on the Michigan team, especially our defensive backs, to have a really gritty day and beat the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the Bussin Bowl. Join us when we recap on Sunday what happened in Saturday's matchup. And we'll take callers, we'll take people that want to come on stage and talk. We'll do all that good stuff on the other side of another episode of the Big House Breakdown. Peace and go blue.